The Bureau of Land Management in Oregon and Washington has placed a top priority on the management of riparian areas on public land. The wise use of the natural resources in the United States is a challenge for everyone. And that challenge requires cooperation and commitment by private landowners, federal and state agencies, local groups, organizations, and the general public. We are optimistic about the future of our riparian resources because of the opportunities and benefits achieved through proper management. Let's consider riparian areas and their relationship to land management commitments. What happens upstream affects the quality and the quantity of the water, recreation, soils, wildlife, fishing, and industry. Riparian areas are the green zones along the banks of rivers and streams and around springs, bogs, wet meadows, lakes, and ponds. They are very restricted areas, comprising less than 1% of the land base on Bureau of Land Management lands in eastern Oregon. They contain very distinct temperature and airflow patterns, and usually a greater vegetative diversity than adjacent upland areas. Although riparian areas are an extremely small percentage of our total land base, they are critical to the water cycle. They function as systems, which provide several important benefits. Systems in good condition recharge a percentage of the underground aquifers by building water supplies, which are sources for wells, springs, and seeps. This water storage, or sponge effect, also increases the year-round stream flow, providing more water for domestic and recreation use, particularly in the summer months. Functioning riparian systems are also vital to soil stability and water quality. Riparian vegetation slows the water flow, allowing sediments to settle out. They also provide a hydro buffer and a root mass to hold those settled soils in place. Vegetation, which is the key to a functioning riparian system, also provides habitat for 80% of the wildlife species in eastern Oregon, species that depend on these systems for some part of their life cycle. However, riparian management is much, much more than just wildlife habitat. Inventories reveal that many riparian areas are far below their productive potential. Proper management will restore these degraded sites and will reverse the present trend that is resulting in our aquifers drying up. Water is an elusive natural resource that has to be properly managed to maintain life. The vegetative potential for these sites and the rate of recovery at each of the sites is influenced by stream gradient, the intensity of the flow, the period of flow, the amount of sediment transported, and the soil types available. Severely degraded stream riparian systems are usually characterized by a lack of vegetation, severe channel cutting, and intermittent or no flow in the summer months. Stream channels in degraded systems usually confine all flows in all seasons with no spreading effect. Riparian systems that have recovered provide aquifer recharge, water storage, sediment filtering, and soil stabilization. These areas are generally characterized by a diversity of vegetation that includes a variety of grasses, forbs, sedges, shrubs, and trees. The channels are stable and summer flows improved. Management must include conditions which address the needs of the riparian vegetation, the functions of the riparian system, and the potential of the site. However, riparian systems are resilient, and that's the bright spot. An example of resiliency is exhibited on Ramsey Creek in eastern Oregon between 1974 and 1978. Some riparian areas recover quickly if they are provided with the right conditions and the proper management. Studies and observations show that summer grazing practices that do not consider the needs of the riparian system generally result in declining conditions in that system. Remedies include changing the season of grazing use to a period which favors riparian vegetative growth, such as early spring, fall, or winter, total exclusion of livestock from the riparian area, or a combination. For severely eroded areas, structural measures such as riprap can help to accelerate riparian recovery. In eastern Oregon, juniper trees have been used successfully to riprap eroding stream channels. Water velocity is reduced, allowing sediment to rebuild the eroded site. The trees act as temporary filters until vegetation becomes established. Riparian recovery is possible and essential, as shown on Camp Creek in Crook County, Oregon. The system is now providing the physical filtering of water. Soil sediments were deposited, raising the stream bed level by 6 feet. Soil stability. Banks are revegetating and becoming less steep. Erosion has decreased. Water storage. The mass of soil, roots, and decaying vegetation acts as a sponge. Water flows through the summer months where once it was dry. The positive benefits of riparian management have also been realized by one of our local ranchers, E.J. Krupp of the Bonneview Ranch.
A few years ago, I didn't know the meaning of the word riparian, and I still kind of fail to recognize the complexity that some folks try to make an issue of. It was basically a matter of economics that prompted us to do something with our riparian areas. We had the age-old problem that every cowman knows and recognizes. The hot summer months come along, and here comes those old cows boiling off the hills, and they camp right in these riparian areas. They eat everything that's green and lay there and lose weight from then on. We, number one, wanted a management-sized area that we could graze. And number two, I wanted to place a fence in a location that eliminated the temptation of the cattle walking the fence and creating a nuisance problem. And so we come up with what we've did here. This is an area, probably a quarter of a mile wide right in here. By far the most important issue connected with the riparians is the water in the riparians. We're about 240 days into a pretty dry year. We've had 2.97 hundredths of an inch of rain since the first of the year. This stream that we're standing side of was dry 4 out of the 9 years preceding any riparian improvements. Years that had probably double the amount of precip in the same length of time of where we're at this year. We still have a live flowing stream here. But anyway, this has opened my eyes to the fact that season-long grazing on these riparian areas are definitely detrimental.
Hey, one thing a lot of people tend to do when they're looking at riparian management is leave the uplands out. Don't you think that that's a big mistake?
Well, definitely. I've run into that sort of thing myself. They tend to isolate the riparian as though the rest of the world didn't exist. What happens in your upland areas is directly reflected in these riparians. If they're overgrazed and your water cycle is disrupted, you've got a tremendous amount of runoff when you do have precipitation. Rather than that moisture going into the soil, it has a direct bearing on what how a riparian will function.
Well, I think you can see now why we're so interested in good resource management of the riparian systems. The riparian system, the wise use of water resources, is an opportunity and a challenge to all of us. Federal, state, local organizations, private individuals, landowners, people who are just generally concerned about the condition of the resource. We're planning to spend considerable time in working together in a coordinated resource management planning effort in order to get the job done. It isn't a cost so much that we should be concerned about in this program, it's the opportunity and the benefits that we can get from good, wise use of water, of soil resources, of the forage, of the wildlife habitat, and all those other values that you find along riparian areas. We'd like for you, your organization, various groups and agencies to get together to work on the problem. I'm sure that working together, we will come up with a much better utilization, management, and development of the natural resources of the West.
For more information on riparian management, write or telephone Bureau of Land Management, P.O. Box 2965, Portland, Oregon 97208. Telephone 503-231-6274.